So you've got intentionality. And the next piece that we've got to talk about is to compound the power of intentionality. How do you compound the power of intentionality? How do you create another zero after the magnitude that intentionality creates? You start you start aligning yourself with an intentional life. What does that mean? You start by choosing segments of your time and energy. And you become intentional about them. You have a daily schedule in which each increment, and you get to determine what that increment is. Is the increment 15 minutes? Is the increment 5? Is the increment half an hour? But you measure your day out in increments. And you look at it like an architect, like a sculptor, like a potter, like a painter, like a writer. You look at that canvas, look at that schedule, and you don't just do what 99% of people do. What do 99% of people do? They put things on their schedule related to other people. Oh, well, I've got that appointment from 2:15 to 3:15. Yep. Oh yeah, I've got class. I've got class 10 to 10:30. Well, I have to pick up Susie at 3:45, and then at 4:30 we're going to Target, but we've got to meet Bill for dinner at 5. So all related to other people. Which is fine. It's great. It's important. But the rest of the day is just gaps. Intentional living is to look at that canvas and to do it artfully. Artfulness and intentionality are so similar. You look at that and you start sketching and you go, okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, I intend to read my book from 9:15 to 9:40. I intend to notice the difference. Notice the difference symbolically between this gesture. Oh, I've got a pen in my hand. I've got a pen. I've got a crayon. I've got a piece of paper. In contrast to. So you're there with your piece of paper and your pen. And you actually map out your whole day. And you look at it. And you recognize your humanity and your mere mortalness. that you realize you're just a human. You're not a superhuman. You're going to go to bed at 9 and wake up at 5. You're going to go to bed at 11 and wake up at 7. You're going to go to bed at 1 a.m. and wake up at 9 a.m. When you wake up, you're going to do your things. But if you do them intentionally, here's the wild thing. Here's the profound thing. If you do them intentionally, you have 16 hours between when you wake up and you go to sleep. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, depending on how much sleep you like. But that's a lot of time to work with. It's a lot of time to do a lot of interesting things. It's a lot of time to do a lot of interesting things that we're capable of doing when we utilize the power of our choice to do things. There's so many fascinating, compelling things that we can create and we can learn. And this goes back to the 3, the B, the C, the D. B stands for be. C stands for consume, and D stands for do. So a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of interesting things we can consume from a learning perspective. There's a lot of things that we can do from a creating perspective. I can consume a carrot, and I can also consume a course in ancient literature. I can consume any type of audiobook or education or learn a new language. And I can do things like write a book, write a song, be of service, go for a walk, attend an event, wash a dish. There's a lot of ways to be C and D. And there's a lot of time. But when we say, I don't have enough time, or there's not enough time, we create anxiety. And in that anxiety that we create, we then want to escape from that anxiety, and therefore we lose time by escaping from that anxiety. So we get intentional. We fill up our day in segments with our pen and our paper. Until it looks like, yeah, that looks like a good day. That looks like a good day. Oh yeah, I'll put that there. I'll put that there. I'll put that there. Oh, I'm gonna move that to there. I'm gonna get rid of that. Put that there. Yeah. Zoom out. Looks like a good day. And now the key that exponentializes it, the key that puts the 0 at the end, the key that improves it to a whole order of magnitude, is part 2. And part 2 is iteration. Part 1 is intentionality, and part 2 is iteration. Part 2 is looking at that and saying, how can I do that a little bit better tomorrow? How can I do that a little bit better? How can I do that a little bit more effectively? How can I do that with a bit more relaxation? How can I do that with a bit more joy? How can I do that with a bit more productivity? How can I be that with a bit more peace? How can I consume that with a bit more nutrients? And we iterate. The magic formula is intentionality and iteration. Now contrast that to what we're facing in culture and society. Most of us don't have intentionality. So we let our attention become manipulated by outside forces. Instead of intention, it's attention. And instead of iteration, it's something that that weighs a lot of people down. And that is instead of iterating, they abandon. Or if you want something a little bit more catchy and rhymey, instead of iterating, they quiterate. They quit, they stop, they abandon it. It's too hard. That's what they tell themselves. It's too hard. Yeah, it was just, no, it was too much. It was too much. It was too much. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. No, I mean, I tried for a while, but yeah, I did that for 3 weeks, and then, yeah, no, that was good. That was really good. We abandon. We have an intention, and then we abandon it. We abandon it in milliseconds, or we abandon it in weeks, or we abandon it in months. We get ideas for intentionality all the time. We learn about something on the internet or something. Oh, I should really make that. I should really do that every day. I should really make that. I should really do that. I should really make that. I should really do that practice. It'd be really good for me. That'd be really good for me if I did that every day. We abandon it 5 seconds later. Oh, I don't have the discipline. Oh, I won't remember. Oh, it's too much to do. And if we get ourselves to the point where we're like, no, I'm going to be intentional. I'm really going to do this. Then when things get challenging, when things get hard, we make the mistake of abandoning instead of iterating. Because to abandon is to stop. To stop any progress we've been making. And to iterate is to adapt. So let me give you some examples, some real world practical examples of this, just to play around with. You're going to the gym. You're finally at the gym. You haven't been to the gym in years. And you start a routine. And you do it Tuesday and Thursday, and then Tuesday and Thursday, and Tuesday and Thursday, and Tuesday and Thursday, and Tuesday and Thursday. And then all of a sudden, one Tuesday, what happens? It's really cold. Or you get a cold. Or you go on a trip. Or it's the holidays. Or you get injured. Something happens. And you stop. And then years later, you're like, why did I stop? Oh, yeah, because there was that obstacle. You say, every day I'm going to wake up at 7 a.m. and meditate. So you wake up at 7 a.m. and meditate, 7 a.m. and meditate, 7 a.m. and meditate, 7 a.m. and meditate. Meditate. And then what happens? Well, one day you have an 8 a.m. appointment, so you can't meditate at 7 because you got to be getting ready at 7, so you miss that day. And then you feel guilt and shame that you missed that day, and then the next day you've already missed one day, so you might as well miss Tuesdays. And besides, it's Saturday and you're going to the farmer's market anyways. And so now you've missed 2 days. And I guess, yep, there you go. You've stopped it. You've stopped your 7 a.m. meditation. To iterate and to adapt is to hold that through line of intentionality, to hold that commitment. And to step back and look at the situation and acknowledge that life happens and have a little internal dialogue and say, okay, all right, Monday through Thursday, I did my 7 a.m. meditation. Then Friday I had that appointment at 8 a.m., so I missed it due to that, okay? And then Saturday, I went to the farmer's market because I was feeling shame and guilt. How do I want to work with that? How do I want to work with my intention? And to work with that is to iterate that, is to adapt that. What do I want to do? I have choices I can make. Do I want it to be something that I do at 7 a.m. every day? In which case my iteration is do better at scheduling appointments for later in the day and skip farmer's market or go later on Saturday, right? There's the adaptation that way. And the other adaptation is to go, no, I actually feel really good about Monday through Thursday meditating at 7 a.m. and then giving myself a 3-day break. I feel good doing a 4-day on, 3-day off, 4-day on, 3-day off. So there's this inner dialogue, this inner exploration, this inner um, accountability, this inner love, this inner relationship that allows for that to be iterated as opposed to just abandoned, adapted. So that's where a lot of power lies. It may sound harsh or extreme, but when we are not intentional, we bleed energetically. We bleed our energy and we bleed our time. We bleed it out of our lives rather than investing it into our lives. It is a form of energetic, psychic illness. It's an invisible illness. It's a cultural illness. It's a societal illness that affects the individual, that bleeds the individual of their energy and their time. And for some, it's a small bleed like a nosebleed. And for others, it's a gushing leak of their energy. A leak that takes out so much life force and contributes to so much inner pain, inner suffering, depression. A person can seem like they've got their whole thing together, their whole life together, everything's going well on the surface, everything's going great. But they're bleeding their energy out, bleeding their emotional energy out. And there's an existential element to the bleed too. It's an existential bleed. Because if time and energy has a limited quantity, if a person's going to live, be lucky to live for 80 or 100 years, or less so to live 40 or 60 years, or less so to live 20 or 40 years, or less so to live and die young. In all those cases, there's only so much time, only so much energy. And when we're giving that time and energy to things that are hurting us or draining us, we're not really living. It's a really sad and painful thing to experience and to watch. And to use intentionality and to get support around intentionality to come out of that is super important. Because in society, we have those extreme examples, right? We have drug addictions, extreme examples, horrible drug addictions. And then we have the much more acceptable phone addictions. Oh, I'm just on my phone. On my phone. Late into the night. We're sitting on that bus. We're sitting in that class. We're sitting in that, just to hold waiting for so much of this. There's the benign normalcy of it. If you take an example of someone who is anxious at home, they're at home, they've got to get out, they've got to go somewhere. They don't want to, they know they should work on something, but they just got to go. And all of a sudden they just find themselves in the car, and then the next moment they're at some shopping department store, and they're looking around, and they're looking at this. Oh, should I buy that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I buy that? And then all of a sudden they're standing in a long line, and they're standing in a long line, and they're standing in a long line, and they're on their phone, they're flipping through, and they're on a long line, and flipping through the phone. Flipping through the phone, flipping through the phone. Finally they get through the line, they get to the car, but there's a couple of cars in front, so they get on their phone, they look at the phone, and they go, no, I really shouldn't look at the phone while I'm driving or while I'm in this parking lot. So they put the phone down, but then they pick the phone up again. They say, I really should put the phone down. Okay, I'll just listen to something. And it's like this quote unquote normal thing. That is devoid of the kind of life that comes from intentionality. Because if you ask that person, are you really wanting to go to the store? Are you really wanting to shop? Are you really wanting to wait in line and look at your phone? Are you really wanting? If you really ask the person deep down, they'd say, no, I'm just feeling ... And they would tell you what they're feeling. No, I don't. I'm just really sad that Ben isn't coming home for Christmas. No, I didn't really want to do all that. It's just I felt lonely and bored. And overwhelmed. No, I didn't really need to go to the store and buy those things. I just felt super depressed and like I had no one to talk to. No, I didn't really want to go to the store and buy all that stuff. I was just feeling so anxious about the test coming up, and I can't stop thinking about the test coming up, and I just needed to stop thinking about the test coming up, and shopping helps me stop thinking about the test coming up. So this is why intentionality is so important. It's like we can build our lives through intentionality, and we can crumble our lives through coping. And I've experienced both. And that longing, I can feel that longing within me to self-soothe. Yeah, it's so fascinating. There's such a deep longing for connection. And without that connection, there is such a strong desire to self-soothe. Like that part of me that wants deep, meaningful connection with other being. When that's met, when that connection between being and being is met, it brings so much peace and health and groundedness. Whether that's relationship, whether that's community, whether that's, it typically involves a healthy one-on-one or a group or communal relationship. Connection, meaningful, positive, joyful, alive connection. And without that, the pull towards self-soothing is so strong. I notice it when something small, when something seemingly small snowballs. So I notice it when, like, if I am, let's say, for example, I'm not going to have the phone. Let's say I have the intentionality to not have the phone. But then I start thinking about all sorts of things and I get anxious or stressed and then I walk 25 feet away and I get the phone. Or sometime else during the day when I'm like, I'm just going to go onto the phone for 30 seconds. And 30 seconds becomes an hour and a half. I notice the snowball effect when I don't typically buy chips anymore. I don't typically buy potato chips anymore. But when I do, I have almost no capacity for intentionality. I have almost no capacity to go, I mean, if you said, hey, don't you have a handful of chips today, handful tomorrow, handful the next day, and handful the next day? No way. No way. I eat that whole bag. My God, that pint of ice cream, so easy for me just to eat the whole thing. Because that longing, to feel okay, that longing to feel loved, The longing to feel loved and understood and seen. A mom cradling a baby. Two partners holding hands and looking into each other's eyes. A bunch of kids, friends sitting around a campfire telling stories. On a warm summer night in July. Connection, community, friendship, family, lover, friend. And to the different degrees that people don't experience that. Intentionality can be challenging, and the more challenging it becomes, the more important it becomes. How can I nourish my life to the best of my ability today? How can I nourish my life to the best of my ability tomorrow? How can I continue to nourish my life with intentionality and iterate upon that daily? So that I feel more and more healthy and more resourced. How will I intentionally be? How will I intentionally consume? How will I intentionally do? It's all we can do. And do we have the courage, the strength, the fortitude? Do we have the resource? Do we have the awareness? Do we have the consciousness to align with that intentionality? You could say it's a hero's journey, and you could say it's a road less traveled. You could say that in a sea of people just kind of floating. Or you could say where the masses are kind of floating around, being pulled this direction, pulled this direction, pulled this direction, pulled this direction. Can you choose through awareness to be one of the few? And I don't know what the few means. If it's 1%, if it's 0.1%, if it's 7%. But of the people on planet Earth who can wake up in the morning and say, okay, this is how I intend to invest my energy and my time today. I had a blank canvas. I designed it. I intended it. Now I'm living that. And then at the end of the day and at the end of the week, to meta, reflect on that, and change things, to iterate, to adapt. The order of magnitude that can bring, that will bring to your life if you prioritize it, if you adopt it, if you bring it in as part of your identity, if you choose it. If you absorb it, if you let it become you. Because otherwise it's just a cute, fleeting, conceptual idea that you say, oh yeah, maybe one day I'll try that, or oh yeah, or you start to talk about it. Oh yeah, intentionality. You do that thing that so many of us do where we learn about a concept. And so we know about the concept, but we don't do anything to embody that concept. So this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to implement. And every day is an opportunity to implement. And self-judgment isn't necessary. Cliche as it is. Do your best. Do your best. Do your best. Revisit what you've done and do a little bit better. You don't need to do their best. You don't need to do better than yourself from 10 years from now. Just take the best that you've got, do a little bit better. Revisit and keep that pattern. And anytime you forget, it's okay. You don't need self-judgment. Just bring your awareness back. Anytime you lose track of intentionality or iteration, just return to these basic lessons. Return to this basic energetic. And wake up in the morning and try again. Because if you keep waking up in the morning and trying again, you're going to discover an aliveness that you never otherwise could have imagined if you quit. Intentionality and iteration. The end. For now.